it'll come up with a message on my screen.
Hello, my darling hearts.
Hello,
hi. So this is the beautiful Alison, and she has a fabulous Instagram page called Ancestral Kitchen, which I've been following because it gives me such a buzz. And a lot of the posts are about fermented grains, which I'm very excited about. And we'll go into that a bit in a while. But just for now, Alison, would you introduce yourself to the people and tell them where you're coming from? Maybe give them a little idea about your health journey and what brought you to this place. Okay.
Yeah, okay. So I'm Alison. I'm married to Rob, and we have a 7-year-old son called Gabriel. And I share my food on Ancestral Kitchen, as you mentioned. With the food, the thing that drives me around my food is I'm passionate about food that's good for our biome, that's good for our community, and that's good for our world. And I live in Italy and have a small apartment that I do all my kitchen antics in and share from. And talking about my journey, what got me here. So I grew up in a kind of a normal UK household. And I say normal in that I mean the shopping was done at the supermarket. Focus was on getting food for the family at a reasonable cost. There was not really a focus on kind of going to farmers or making sure we bought the decent eggs. My mum had a repertoire of dishes that she cooked. And I had an unusual childhood, certainly back then, in the fact that by the time I got to about 10, I started getting overweight. And I say by the time I was about 15, I was obese. And at age 20, just to give you some figures, my scales in the bathroom only went up to 20 stone. And when I stepped on them, they went all the way around.
No way. I would never have believed that looking at you. No, I never would have believed that. It's amazing.
No one does when they see me. So yeah, at 20 years old, I was more than 20 stone. I don't know how much more. And between 20 and 21, I lost half my body weight. And back then, I did that by a way that I wouldn't do now, by cutting out fat from my diet, because it was like, you know,
oh my god, from a gapster. You know, we're gapsters, aren't we? And it's like, you cut out fat, you did what?
You should see the fat in my fridge now. But yeah, because that's what it was all about then. It was about, you know, low fat, fat's the enemy. You know, you've got to have low calorie, no fat.
Rosemary Colony, what was her name? Rosemary Colony, the low fat diet. I did that for a little while. Very weird. Yeah. Oh my god, I can't believe I got so brainwashed.
I lost half my body weight, which was great. And not only did that change, you know, how I looked and how my psyche was, but it gave me the ability gave me the belief that I could do anything that I wanted to, because I didn't do it by going to Weight Watchers. I didn't do it by, you know, following someone else's plan. I just did it myself. Wow. And I did it. And it completely changed my world, because I'd been the fat kid all my life. You know, I'd always looked in the mirror and I'd always seen myself being either chubby or literally obese. So I lost the weight then, but not in a way that I would recommend that anyone does, really. But that was kind of the start of my health journey. Pretty, and I managed to kind of maintain my weight throughout my 20s, but I kind of went up and down by about 2 stone. I was eating kind of normally. I had what I call another life then, where I was married and I had a house and a nice car and I worked for Microsoft, and it was all about living a good life. So eating, you know, lobster and drinking lots of good wine, etc. That's a whole nother story. And then I kind of got to about 30 and my life sort of unraveled a little bit. I ended my marriage and I quit my job at Microsoft. I left corporate and I decided that I wanted to do something that I cared about. And I ended up working for a music charity in London and cycling from Brixton to Soho every day to go and work there. And fairly shortly after that, I met my now husband, who had been on a very long health journey himself. And he introduced me to other ways of eating. And because I've always been so creative in the kitchen, I kind of jumped on it So we went through a journey ourselves, which was, at the time he was vegan. So I quickly swapped to being vegan. And then we were raw vegan for 2.5 years.
Wow, that is super cleansing. That is like an amazing,
yeah.
but I mean, to be vegan, raw vegan for that long is an amazing feat of self-control and self-awareness. And you're lucky that you came out of it relatively unscathed, because it is like fasting, isn't it? It's like fasting.
It was. And it, you know, I feel like for the 30 years before then, particularly when I was overweight, I put so much into my body that shouldn't have been there. And for a time, I feel like the raw vegan did, as you allude to, really cleanse me. You know, I did lots of water fasts, I did juice fasts, but I got to the point where I have polycystic ovaries, and I'd had really bad periods when I was younger. And then when I went raw vegan and vegan, my periods completely stopped. And I got to the point where I wanted to have a child.
And you weren't a mummy yet, and that happened, and it must have been like, oh my God, how can I possibly do this?
I wasn't
I can't even have it. Wow.
And I hadn't had a menstrual cycle for 5 years.
Oh my God, I'm so shocked. And people are going to be blown away by this story. When are you writing your book? Oh my God.
I went to the doctors, and the doctor said to me, you will never get your cycle back naturally. And I looked at her and I didn't say anything. And in my head, I thought, yes, And because I had a really supportive partner who'd been through an incredible health journey, and because of my natural curiosity and willingness to just take on stuff, I started researching kind of fertility foods and that kind of thing. And that's what took me back to eating cooked food and eating animal food. Okay. And I'd been feeling towards the end of raw vegan that I didn't have enough energy in my body. I couldn't move my legs. I knew that it was kind of coming to an end, that I had to change. And so then I found the cookbook Nourishing Traditions and Weston Price, and I started reintroducing fish, wild caught fish, eggs. I started fermenting. This was about 2009, I think. And I started tracking my temperature. I started reintroducing saturated fat. Slowly, over a period of about a year, I changed my diet completely. And through tracking my temperature and seeing what was kind of going on with me, I could see that my body temperature was quite low. And when I ate saturated fat, my body temperature increased to a more normal range. And like I said, over about a period of a year, my diet completely changed to be processing grains, to eating saturated fat, to eating meat, to eating eggs, to eating fermented food, fermented dairy. And then, miracle of miracles, one May, we were living in Italy at that point, my periods just came back. I got a period for the first time in 5 years. Hooray! And within about 6 weeks, I was pregnant. I was just like, and it was really strange because I had one period and then I didn't have another one. And I thought, oh gosh, maybe I'm not going to have a period for like 2 years. And I was getting quite hot. And I thought, my friend said to me, just take a pregnancy test. And I thought, no, I can't be pregnant. And I was.
Wow. So
we had Gabriel, I came back to England to have Gabriel because I wanted a natural birth and I didn't want to go into hospital. I didn't want to have any scans. And there was not a midwife who would take me on in Italy because I couldn't tell them when I was due because I didn't have a regular cycle and I wasn't willing to have scans. So we came back from Italy on the train because we didn't want to fly because I was pregnant and had Gabriel at my partner's mum's house. We lived with her for a while at home in water, no drugs, no nothing, fabulous.
I did 2 of those as well, and, 2 births in water with no drugs. I got high as a kite on my body's natural endorphins, and I don't know what, I was really flying. It was amazing. Yeah, well done. And, awesome.
Thank you. The birth was wonderful. The first year and a half of Gabriel's life were a real struggle. I found it extremely hard to breastfeed. We had lactation consultants. I was pumping through the night. I didn't get any sleep. It was absolutely awful. And in the end, we turned to, after 12 weeks of me trying and basically being an absolute wreck because I hadn't slept at all, we turned to the Weston Price baby formula and fed Gabriel that.
Oh my
And
God.
then
Now, can we just tell people a little bit about what that, because when I was on a small, I was a smallholder, I had land, I became a swineherd and a shepherd, and we ran the coop co-op and the veg box on this. I was a new farmer and I was very hard work. But then when we had to leave the land and take our house down, I was so sad and so shocked. And my mama pig, who had 6 tiny piglets at the time, collapsed. It was like she sensed my woe or something, and she just collapsed. But that left me with 6 piglets to deal with just when I was leaving the land, So I had to go back there and feed them 3 times a day minimum. And I gave them the Weston A Price baby formula. So no, but I mean, okay, it's good for piglets. It's good for babies who cannot take the breast milk. So let's tell everybody all about that. What's that? Can you remind us?
So it's a formula that's in both the Nourishing Traditions book and the Weston Price baby book, and it is designed to have the same nutritional profile as a mother's breast milk as much as possible, and it uses raw milk. Rob and I had been having raw milk for 3 or 4 years before that, and had we trusted our suppliers. We had a lady in Kent who produced goat's milk, who I met at the Weston Price conference actually, who we got raw goat's milk from. And then we literally just, every 2 days in the kitchen, we had a big blender and we had all the ingredients that went in, and we mixed it up and put it into bottles. And that was Gabriel's food. It was a big step for me to move to that, because I really wanted to breastfeed. I'd been to classes before Gabriel was born. I was absolutely ready for it. And for me to give up that dream was really quite.
How old was Gabriel when you said I can't breastfeed it? Forget it.
12 weeks. I've been trying to feed for 12 weeks. So
he must have got a bit for those first three months. Enough.
He did.
Well done. Wow, that must.
I can only. It was a journey of me understanding I can only give what I can give, and it's true of every mum, isn't it?
Yeah.
So Gabriel had that, and then he had problems with digestion and elimination, in that he would get constipated, he would have other problems like that. So we had quite a rough time. And when we started the raw milk, the health visitor found out what we were doing and reported us. And then we had a phone call from Child Protection, who basically said we were being negligent and they needed to come and visit us because we weren't treating our child properly. And that was absolutely horrendous. I'd literally come out this period where I'd not slept for about 4 months and given up the idea of breastfeeding. And we'd gone into this, make the formula. And then suddenly there's someone on the end of the phone telling me that potentially they're going to take my child away because I was feeding raw milk. So thank the Lord, or whoever's up there, we found a paediatrician who runs the hospital, which the local hospital was Tunbridge Wells, and the head paediatrician there basically said to us, I'll take you on. What did people feed their kids in the past when they couldn't breastfeed? Of course they fed them the milk from the animals. If that was what was available, that's what you feed your children. Yeah. So he just said, let me see Gabriel. Let me, you come in and see me regularly, and I will make sure that these other people don't bother you anymore.
What a blessing. Wow.
I went to see him.
God for him, yeah.
He then got basically the health visitor and the local GP off our backs by looking at Gabriel himself and saying he's absolutely fine. Yeah. He's really, really healthy. So we just kind of got over that. And then this is turning into a long story, but it is.
It'll be so interesting for people, though, because these are the issues of the day that so many people are going through, So this is fascinating, and you're so beautiful and smiley, and you look so content, So people will be aiming to get where you're at, So all of this experience is going to help people so much. So thanks for sharing.
It's a slow journey.
Yeah.
When Gabriel was 1.5, he had a incident where he couldn't keep food down, then he couldn't keep water down, and we thought it was just a bug to start with. Then we went to the local hospital because it didn't improve, and they did a scan on him, and he had an obstruction in his bowel. And so then we were rushed up to St Thomas's in London, where for about 2 days they had no idea what was going on. And he went through the most horrendous procedures, having dye put in him and X-ray things put on him. And we know we'd given him no drugs, no nothing up to this point. It was so stressful. In the end, we're sitting with him at the bed at St Thomas's Hospital, and I'm looking at the screen, it shows his heart rate and his temperature and all that kind of thing. And I say to Rob, he's getting worse. We've got to do something about it. We've got to go and tell the doctors. It's about 3 a.m. or something. So went to the nurse, and the nurse called the surgeon, the consultant who's looking after us. And he came in and he said, we don't know what's wrong with him, but we've got to take him to surgery. We've got to just open him up and see what's wrong. So that day, that night, they took him to hospital. They opened up his intestines and they found what's called a meccal diverticulum, which is a bit of the placenta which is inside the baby, kind of a flappy bit that's left after birth. And his meccal had got tangled around his bowel and pulled tight. So nothing was getting through. So what they did in that operation was cut the meccal to release the tightness. And then there was 20 centimetres of the bowel on either side that was dead. So they cut that off and sewed his bowel back together. And then basically they just handed him over to us and said, oh yeah, feed him a bit of yogurt. That's good. And of course he'd had morphine, he'd had antibiotics, he'd had all these horrendous things that we just had not wanted him to have. And really since then, part of our journey, the big part of our journey has been healing him, because he's had horrendous bowel problems. And in that journey, both Rob and I have grown and developed. We've been through a plethora of different kind of options. We've tried things, tested things, and dealt with the fact that, you change one thing and you think you've only changed one thing, but it's so hard to isolate something. And then you don't get a response for a couple of days and you don't quite know what's happened. And it's been really 6 years, he's 7 now, of being gentle, kind, thinking, trying, and using all my skills as a creative cook and my love of food and my knowledge of food and all Rob's experience of health to move his diet and to move us as a family to a place where he's well, as long as he eats what we know he can eat. And in that journey, Rob's always on a journey for his health and I'm always on a journey for my health. So both of us have been stepping along with him and kind of healing and learning and sharing together and enjoying food as a family.
Beautiful. So what a story. And you are a living testament to the power of human focus and to gather ourselves and to go, I'm going to do this, I can go through this, it's going to be okay. It's just so inspiring. Thank you so much, Alison, for sharing with us. Can you tell us when you found GAPS and when you started to really go, right, GAPS is what we're going to do now?
Let's think. So I think I'd known about GAPS through Weston Price, because it's talked about often in Weston Price circles. And then I there was a Weston Price conference in the UK when I was pregnant, and it was quite close to where I was living. So I went to it, and there it was totally inspiring, inspiring. There I heard Natasha speak, and I loved what she was saying, and I bought the book and I read it. And sharing that with my husband and knowing the situation we were in with Gabriel, it seemed like it was just a no-brainer that we had to try GAPS.
A no-grainer or a no-brainer? A no-grainer.
No-brainer. Yeah, a no-grainer.
A no-grainer, no-brainer.
And we read, all the science behind it, and it tied in with what we'd learned previously from other stuff, and it tied in with research from Weston Price and what we've been doing. And so because we knew about that from my original kind of going to the conference, when we were kind of settled and we knew what Gabriel's situation was, we thought we need to try GAPS. So I think Gabriel, when we moved to Cornwall after being in Kent for the birth, when Gabriel was just over 1. And we started GAPS at about, I think he was about 1.5 when we started GAPS. And yeah, that was difficult. GAPS is a commitment, big time. But we met a local farmer, so we got meat from the local farmer, and I can do anything in the kitchen, literally. Just give it to me and I'll find a way of doing it. So we had the slow cooker, and we had 2 slow cookers at the time, actually. So we were getting bones as well as meat from local farmers, 2 local farmers, one with poultry, one with beef and pigs. And we had 2 cast iron pans. And we started off with intro, because we tend to just jump in things at the deep end. And we had basically a kind of a GAPS factory in our kitchen with stock, with stews, with the things in the cast iron pan. And we went through intro many times, because we would learn something each time we went through intro. We would learn, when we started to introduce the foods that were on the later stages of GAPS, things that Gabriel could tolerate and things that Gabriel couldn't. And sometimes we take it too far, reintroducing foods, particularly pulses. And we'd be like, okay, we're back in chaos now, and Gabriel's got diarrhea everywhere, So let's just take stock. We know what he can eat. Take stock. We know what he can eat, so let's take him back again to intro, and let's get him settled on a course through that. And then we start slowly coming back into the full GAPS diet and bringing things in one at a time to see what he could take and what he couldn't.
Right.
I think altogether we were on GAPS for nearly 3 years.
Okay.
And we went through intro, I think, 6 times.
Wow.
So,
dedication.
Feels,
dedication.
Yeah. And that's
dedication.
the only way we could. That's
what you need.
It's the only way. And I mean, I'm blessed because I have that kind of kitchen logistics. It's not something I struggle with.
Yeah.
And so I could do it. And Rob and I are both blessed with that commitment, because we've been on health journeys ourselves. And when you see a kid like that not able to function normally, he couldn't function normally. He was having diarrhea when we were out, and we'd have to take with us all the time wipes and spare pants and spare trousers. And it was horrendous to see him like it. Was trying to potty train him, but he didn't have control. So it's so frustrating as a mum, because you're trying to get on with your life as well and not make him feel bad about the fact that he doesn't have control over this, but not actually understanding what's at the core of it. That's the most frustrating thing. If you can say, right, he's allergic to this and he can't eat this and he can't eat this, then you can just cut it out. But the process of getting from a mess to a situation where most of that is so hard. And it really was. I mean, he's only, I'd say, in the last 6 months that we've seen real stable situation with him. And so I'd say the last 5 years have been incredibly testing, because GAPS and the other things we've done, they're a serious commitment, and one that you need as much love and patience and support as you can get for.
Yeah, word, absolutely. Man, what a story. And so you say he's been stable for about 6 months. Congratulations for getting to that stage. Really, wow. And on your page, I saw you were saying, I'm packing him off to school and he's having his sourdough. So he's on the grains now. He's on, but they're all beautifully fermented. Yeah. And I also saw that he had like a little plate full of something, and it had the KEFIR grains on the plate, like a little nibble, like a little jelly. Do you know what I mean? It's so beautiful. It's so beautiful. So what's he eating now then? What can he manage and what can't he manage?
So he definitely can't eat eggs, and he definitely can't eat potatoes. That's absolutely no question. If he eats either of those, he has huge problems. Aside from that, he does eat grains, like you said, but he really doesn't eat many grains that haven't been fermented. So he has sourdough, and he's able to eat gluten grains, no problem. I generally don't cook with wheat. I make bread with spelt. So he has sourdough spelt, he has sourdough rye sometimes, he has sourdough millet and sourdough sorghum. I make a millet and sorghum sourdough as well. So he eats grains. I'd say 80% of them have been fermented. Sometimes we just cook sorghum or millet up in the pan, usually with stock in it.
Yeah, and good fats, I imagine.
Yeah, exactly. He eats, I want to come back to the grains, but I'll try and hug that in my head. He eats a lot of saturated fat. So we render lard and we render tallow. He used to eat coconut oil, but I'm not very happy with taking fats from elsewhere. So we got loads of lard and tallow. So he eats lard and tallow. He eats olive oil as well. He eats fish. He eats meat. He eats offal. He absolutely adores offal. We fed it to him since he was 6 months old, and he's seen us eat it, twice a week all his life. So he thinks it's normal. So he eats heart. He eats liver. He eats spleen. He eats lungs. He eats fruit. And he likes making, sometimes he'll make a kind of a jam thing up where he just cooks the fruit, perhaps with a bit of one of the fermented goodies that I've made in it. He has water kefir every day. He has sauerkraut every day. He has fermented garlic every day. He has the other ferments that I make. So there's a ferment I make called boza with millet that he has. He has the Suans oat ferment that I make. He has, I think possibly that's it. He doesn't have much dairy. We're unsure whether he has a problem with dairy. And that's one of the things we're testing the water with now. Now we've got him on a stable footing, we can slowly start to try some of these things that we're unsure about.
Exactly. And let's imagine that one day his digestion will be completely healed and he'll be able to eat whatever the heck he likes, whenever the heck he likes,
Well, we kind of have the hope and belief that will happen.
Yeah, that's the key though, isn't it, Alison? Because if as parents we believe that there's something wrong with our child, and there always will be something wrong with our child, which is generally speaking what the mainstream will tell you, because they're obliged to cover their asses and make sure that they tell you the worst possible outcomes just in case. I'm not knocking that, I'm not judging it, but that's just a fact. That's what they do. But as we know, as creators, we are spelling things out. We are giving spellings. We're doing spells. Whatever we say, so be it. Whatever we think, so be it. Whatever we say, so be it. So if they say, "Oh, I'm sorry, there's nothing you can do about that," there's nothing you can do about it from your perspective, from the angle you're coming at from the healing. But I'm going to come at it from a completely different angle. I'm going to come at it from this angle where I'm saying everything's possible and the food is the medicine. And let's see what happens when we commit ourselves and do this thing, and look what's happened. So have you been doing the skin test for egg, and what was the other thing you hoped to get? Dairy.
No, we haven't really done any skin tests. We did have a stool test about 5 years ago, maybe.
Well, it gives you a tiny window. That gives you a window of that day, a stool test. It's not very helpful.
Which didn't really show up much. We tend to be of the mind that we can know and see in ourselves what is happening. And it's been obvious with Gabriel, if he's got diarrhea, it's obvious. And so we've relied more on our own abilities, our own senses, and our own trying, our own experiments to move him to the place where he is now, rather than turning to tests. And I do believe that in the future he will be able to eat a lot of the things that he can't eat now.
I love it that you're using your intuition, and that you're using kitchen sink remedies, and you're just kind of like, it's the kitchen, it's just me, the baba, the kitchen, the food, that's it, right? So the skin test I'm talking about is that you take an egg and you split the yolk and the white, and then you just rub it on before you go to bed.
I remember reading about that in the GAPS book.
And you put the yolk on one, put it on the sensitive skin on the inside of the arm or something, and just rub a little bit in and let it dry, and then go to bed. put your pajamas on, and then wake up in the morning and look, is it red? If there's any red, then there's a chance of anaphylactic shock. Don't go there. Don't try ingesting that food. But if there's no redness, okay, let's look at how we can reintroduce, because we can reintroduce dairy, we can reintroduce eggs, even for the most severely asthmatic or people with eczema. And what you do is you use the tip of a toothpick, and you literally put the toothpick into the egg yolk, right? You stir it around, and then you stir the toothpick into the soup. It's that simple, right? And then you just keep doing that. So you're introducing the body to the idea of egg, just in minuscule, minute little doses, tiny, and and you'll see if he has a flare up, he might be a bit loose, or he might, his, whatever the symptoms are, they will return. If it's too much, you'll know. But if it's okay and you don't see the symptoms, you just up the dose. You do 2 toothpicks, 3 toothpicks. Then you do the tip of a teaspoon, and then you do the next little dose that you think is right. If he has a big flare up, maybe that's a healing crisis, which is a good thing, which is caused by the food that you've brought in, and you kind of work through it. You don't stop it completely. You just take the dose down, and this is how we get the dairy back into the equation. And the dairy is the most amazing way to recolonize the gut with the good guys. It's just miraculous. When we can get on a cup of KEFIR a day, it's like, oh my God, nothing can get you. You're like immune. You're just like super.
That's what I want him to be. That's what I want him to be having.
Well, do the skin test. Make some.
I think we did it ages ago when we were on GAPS, because I remember reading it in the book, and I know we did it with the egg, and I think he didn't have any reaction at all. But the chaos that we've been in, we were just like, right, no, we know he has a problem here, so let's just get him stable. Now we're stable, we can start to move.
Exactly. How exciting. I can't wait to hear what your adventures are. How exciting. Oh, so wonderful. Alison, do you know, I'm going to leave it there, because people have such a short span of blah,
Okay.
So this has given people so much to think about, and so many opportunities for, expanding their consciousness and their wisdom involved with GAPS and Weston A Price, and I hear you're a chapter leader for Weston A Price.
Yeah, here in Italy. Yeah, so
awesome.
If you want to know about Weston A Price's resources, well, no, not really, actually. I've got a list of all the farms, and that basically the people that I've contacted. So the place where we get our meat from, the place where we get our fat from and eggs from. And I've been contacted by people who are here, but there's not really an active group in Florence at the moment. It's just kind of me being here as a resource for people as and when they need it.
Man, well, hopefully people can find you. You can start to all get together and, have fun together, and talk about food together, and do your ferments together. And it's wonderful.
Yeah.
And Weston A Price communities are just priceless. Get it? Weston A Price. Anyway, terrible. Oh, it's been so lovely chatting with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And can you just quickly tell people where they can find you, if they want to find out about you?
So I'm online under Ancestral Kitchen. My Instagram handle is ancestral_kitchen. My website is ancestralkitchen.com, and I have a podcast called Ancestral Kitchen Podcast. That's it.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Alison. Lots of love.
No problem.
Bye-bye.
Thank you very much, Emma. Thank you. Bye.